Okay, so today we're going to do a head-to-toe assessment on Oliver. And Oliver is 3 weeks, just over 3 weeks of age. He's born November 4th and it's the 26th of November today. And Oliver likes the light, so we may be in luck here. So at this time, I've placed Oliver on underneath a radiant heater. We don't actually have the heater on, we just have the light on, but we always want to remember thermal regulation is an important component in terms of assessing our baby. We want to make sure that he's kept warm throughout the whole process. So this would allow us to put the heater on if he were cold. Okay, so I'm going to start by washing my hands, completing my hand hygiene. And then, for the sake of this assessment, I'm going to actually put gloves on, just in the event that I might have to put my finger into Oliver's mouth when I assess his palate. I'm going to have to do that, but also just if he gets tired of the assessment, it will allow me to do that. So I need to have my stethoscope and my thermometer. And, oh, hello. And I also need to have alcohol swabs to clean my stethoscope and the tape measure to measure the circumference of his head. So I'm going to start first with his vital signs. So the first thing I'm going to do is assess his respirations. And the best time to do this is when he is just quiet. And a really good way to assess this is by watching his tummy rise and fall. Babies are nose breathers, but they breathe quite deeply through their abdomen. So another way to do it is just to watch it rise and fall, or watch your hand rise and fall when you keep your hand on his tummy. And we need to count for a full minute within neonate to ensure we get the accurate number. Babies have periods of apnea where they breathe very quickly and then they stop. So we count for a full minute. So Oliver's respirations were 44, which is the normal range of 30 to 60 rests per minute. The next thing we're going to assess is Oliver's heart rate, and we're assessing an apical heart rate, and I actually have a pediatric stethoscope with me, which has a smaller diaphragm and bell. If you only had an adult one, you would use the bell portion, but with the pediatric one, you can use the diaphragm. So we're listening to his apical heart rate. And again for a full minute. And I get a score of 148 per minute. Okay. Now 5, which is the normal range of 120 to 160 beats a minute. And now I'm going to check Oliver's temperature, which I believe, because he's not altogether happy with me right now, will be certainly within the normal range, and he's very clear. And the best way to check that temperature is right under his axilla, alongside his body, and just hold his arm down. And most babies don't really like this much. And often it's important to note that vernix can harbor under the axilla. So Oliver has a good temp range of 36.8. And the normal range for a neonate is 36.5 to 37.5. If you had a lower temperature under one arm, you would want to try under the other arm. Okay, there you go. I'm just going to put my finger in his mouth for just 1 sec to see if I can settle him a bit. There you go. Now, while I'm assessing him, I will measure his head circumference, but while we've got him settled, I'm actually looking at the shape of Oliver's head, and it's actually quite round. He has two fontanelles, an anterior fontanelle, which is a diamond-shaped one at the top of his head, and it usually closes about 18 months to 24 months of age. At the back, Oliver has a triangular-shaped fontanelle, the posterior one, and it is a little bit smaller in size, and it closes at about 2 to 3 months. When I look at Oliver's eyes, I can see that he actually has very strong muscles in his eyes. Sometimes you'll note in babies' eyes they have, when they're first born, what we call transient strabismus, where sometimes the muscle control is just a little underdeveloped and the eyes will, one or both will cross at times. But Oliver doesn't have that right now, so I'm not sure if he had that when he was born, but he definitely doesn't have it now. I notice as well that the sclera of his eyes are blue, and this is typical what we'd see in most babies. When we're looking at his eyes as well, sometimes following delivery, specifically if it was a vaginal delivery and a difficult or long, prolonged vaginal delivery, sometimes babies will have swelling in their eyes as well, just from the positioning and the pushing of their head against the cervix during delivery. The other thing we want to note is the pinna of Oliver's ears, because he was born at term and he's definitely 3 weeks from delivery. We can see that the pinna retract very quickly when we move them. Sometimes in a preterm neonate, we'll see that the pinna will be slower to retract, but his, when I bend it, retracts very quickly. The other thing we're noticing is the measurement of the outer canthus of his eye to his ear. We're looking at that line. Oh, that was a nice talk about that. The outer canthus of his eye across to his ear should be a straight line, and he has that on both sides. I'm not going to check the patency of Oliver's nose at this time, but you would do that by occluding each nostril, but I won't do that right now. And right now, with my finger in his mouth, Oliver is demonstrating the sucking reflex very well. This is developed about 33 weeks in utero, and he has a very well developed sucking reflex. As well, with my finger in his mouth, I can assess the soft palate and the hard palate, which is part of my assessment. And now, Oliver, I'd really like to remove my finger, but I don't know that that's going to be popular. I'll just try to open up my tape measure. When we're measuring Oliver's head, we're going around the largest part of the head. And I like to lift his head so I can slide that. There we go. When we measure the circumference of his head, Oliver's head circumference is 38 centimeters, and most babies are 33 to 37. Keep in mind that Oliver is actually 3 weeks old, so when they're first born, it's 33 to 37. See if we can settle Oliver for a second, and while we complete the rest of the assessment. So what you can see when Oliver is moving is good range of motion in terms of his musculoskeletal system. His abdomen is slightly rounded, and his cord has completely dried and fallen off. He is 3 weeks of age, and the cord we would see in the first 24 hours would actually be sort of first 12 hours actually is a little jelly-like, and then begins to harden and falls off in 7 to 10 days. Oliver, actually, his parents noticed as well. Oliver, his skin represents what we call erythema toxicum, which is what we call the baby rash. And he has a little bit of that on his face and on his belly, which is absolutely normal and can appear anytime after delivery up to and including about 4 to 6 weeks of age, and then it will dissipate. Okay. So we would listen to bowel sounds on Oliver with our stethoscope, and we want to listen in all 4 quadrants. Babies will have bowel sounds within the first hour after delivery, and often they will pass meconium within that time frame as well. So I'm just going to listen to bowel sounds. And Oliver has audible bowel sounds in all 4 quadrants. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just cover him a little bit. We're almost done. And I'm going to open his diaper while we assess the genital urinary system. So basically we're assessing Oliver's penis and his scrotum, and if we palpate we can feel that his testes have descended as well. So he has nothing in this diaper because we just changed that a little bit ago. And I'm just going to pick him up and I'm going to turn him over so that you can see. Oops, his diaper's a bit small. Or low. There it comes. I can hear it. If you can see Oliver on his tummy, he's very strong in his muscles. He's actually able to lift his head quite a bit at 3 weeks of age. And he's actually had a little bit of stool in that diaper right now, so we'll change that after. In terms of his back, we can palpate his spine and see that his spine is straight. And when we hold him up, it would actually be curved, or what we call a C-shaped spine. In terms of Oliver's gluteal creases, we can see we're looking for symmetry, and we can actually see as well. Oliver needs a little wipe. We can see as well that the creases are symmetrical, and this is actually really important in terms of the gluteal folds, because this can indicate hip dysplasia sometimes if there isn't symmetry. So now I'm going to actually pick up Oliver and I'm going to put him on the scale to weigh him. And this will be it, Oliver, and I promise you, this is the end. So I'm going to zero the scale with the blanket on. And we're measuring in kilograms. And he is 4.75 kilograms. So I'm going to take you back over. I think you just wanted that diaper off. You're a nudie. You like to be nude.